And I have joining me in the studio at this time, Amechi Asogoni is the former Deputy President of the NLC. Thank you for your time. And also joining virtually is Ejike Okpa Asiwaju, is a public affairs analyst who joins virtually from Ogun State. I still have Ejike with me. Ejike, thank you for staying with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, let's backtrack a bit and talk about the basis for this protest, the demands of the protesters, one of which is improvement in wage and also the drop in fuel prices, pump prices, which of course is a strong item on that particular agenda, which they feel would snowball into the standard of living amongst other issues. Ejike, I'd like to pose this to you. Looking at some of these demands, and they're saying, you know what, this has to be solved in 10 days. How realistic are some of their demands and solutions in terms of achieving them?
Well, I mean, when you say 10 days, it could just be what they say, demand notice. And then the other person you put it on the notice for 10 days will now come back and say, I need 30 days. So it's a negotiating point. The 10 days is not a miraculous day, like at the end of 10 days, you're going to have everything. But the thing is, when you look at the two issues about, wages, $70,000. My question,
70,000 naira.
70,000 naira a month. Glad to have a labor expert here. The thing is that's a federal mandate. So if you live in Lagos and they're paying you 70,000 naira, how does that compare to somebody who lives in some other state that's not as expensive? So that should be a floor. And then what you do is you have the state government in the respective areas pass what they call COLA, cost of living adjustment, to address that. But no Nigerian should earn less than 70,000 naira. Because, the rent in some places are low, the cost of living in some places are low. And then it's actually something that should be of concern, that Nigeria is an oil producer, and then you have these challenges about people being able to buy, gas in order to, because transportation affects everybody. So President Tinubu has said, oh, they're going to sell the crude to Dangote in naira. But the question he didn't say, is he selling it to the equivalent of what the oil would have been trading on the international? Or is he going to say, because it's $85 at least per barrel? Okay, is Tinubu say, oh, we're going to sell Dangote oil at 85 naira? That's unrealistic. Or is he say, hey, we're going to sell it to you at a discount rate to afford you to produce enough domestic gas to support, to lower the price? Subsidy should not be by cash. It should be by credit.
Do you think subsidy should be returned? On petrol, sorry.
You can, but the way you do it is you look at the crude and said, okay, we're going to subsidize, and the subsidizing here should be the discount. You sell it to him. If he's trading on the global market for X, whomever is going to refine that will get it at X lower, so that the government doesn't have to give cash. And that is what is going to benefit Nigerians. So I don't know what they're doing, but it looks like they're borrowing money to pay the people that are importing the crude, and that's a wrong economic model. I mean, so what you got to do is they get offered a discount, because now it's going to impact the pockets of Nigerians. But,
all right. Let me go to Amechi on this one. Now, looking at some of the demands of the protesters, part of which includes hunger, end to hunger, which of course translates into the cost of living. They're also talking about the cost of governance too, which the Nigerians feel is pretty much expensive. Now, some are even demanding that subsidy be returned, particularly on fuel. Amongst a plethora of issues. How realistic do you think some of these demands are vis-a-vis the current policies of this administration and the time frame?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is to recognize the fact that protest is legitimate. Because I've heard Nigerians who they made effort to discourage a democratic instrument that is the only tool that allows for freedom of assembly of Nigerians, don't forget, whenever politicians want to drive campaign, they gather these same people, they use the largest space to talk to them. And they should also give these same people freedom when they want to gather themselves to correct abnormality. So first, I want to uphold that protests should never be discouraged in Nigeria, because that is the only democratic, legitimate means to convey, express the dissatisfaction of Nigerians whenever they feel so. Any Nigerian that feels unsafe should have a democratic platform to express it. And that is what is going on now. When we talk about the economy itself, because don't forget, there is a saying in my place that everybody have a different way of reacting to feeling. And therefore, the time differs when people say it is time for me to say no to a certain degree of change, especially when they're on the negative side. If I heard you correct, in terms of, maybe you recap so that...
the demands, cost of living, particularly the price of food items out there, and then some are even questioning the minimum wage, if at all it's truly a living wage.
Yes. When government is silent, anyone can make opinion, and driving his opinion to be the right position. Now, till now, I expect federal government especially to be telling Nigerians expectations. This issue of be patient is not a solution, because how soon is soon. So when people tell you that the economy is biting on them, there are people that don't. Do you know that most people join this protest because they don't know where to eat?
The same administration, you know, in a way to sort of give Nigerians, or quite a number of Nigerians, some sort of soft landing. We've seen initiatives like palliatives being rolled out. At some point also we saw an administration that, you know, gave out grants. Even recently the Minister of Finance said that the cash transfer is back and that some families are benefiting, amongst a list of, you know, policies which they have constantly said have long-term benefits.
But the ones listed now, do they have long-term benefit? The answer is no. When you create palliative, it's too temporary for any analysis to imagine. When you talk about palliative to cure what problem, and for how soon would that problem last? If government had come to actually table issues to Nigerians that give us 6 months to achieve XYZ, and for these 6 months we are providing this subsidy, that is short-term plan for government to avert hardship. But whereby you tell people to bear with you, they can bear, but it will expire. And that is why you are seeing this reaction. So I don't believe in policy that does not bring lasting solution. Policy should be seen to be solving the immediate problem and addressing the future. What we have now is a way of even diverting funds. Because most of this ministry that disburse this fund to Nigerians, if you check them well, not all the funds get to Nigerians. Because hardly have they published names and account numbers where this money were paid. So when people tell you school feeding, disbursement of funds to certain Nigerians, they want to target 15 million poor Nigerians. How do you ascertain that in every community? How much of our numbers are poor? So we don't have database, the empirical data that shows you the average living standard of Nigerians. So how do you determine the poor people in Kano? How do you determine poor people in Anambra State? So you don't just approve billions of naira, we waste this money, we are still where we are. Do you know the amount of money that has been spent in the last 1 year in trying to mitigate poverty? Have we solved it? The answer is no. Cost of living has increased widely to the extent that the inflation rate is increasing on a monthly basis. That is a threat. And until government sees this as a threat, they cannot provide solution.
All right. I mean, we have a guest virtually. I was just quick to ask you, you know, if you can respond in 30 minutes. Do you think all of this is 30 seconds, sorry, is entirely the fault of the government? Because many have also said there's the human factor, which is greed, particularly on the part of, let's use basic items, for instance. Food. Some traders take advantage of the popular narrative that things have gone up to astronomically hyperinflate prices of basic items. How do you react to that?
Economic management is the duty of government. And that is the foundation for everything. Whenever a master, it's like a company. The drivers to manage a company has the entire responsibility to ensuring the success of that organization.
So are you suggesting some sort of price control on basic items?
When you have in abundance, price in itself will crash. So what is happening is that we have less. You know, what you should produce more is what you consume more. Unfortunately, we don't produce what we consume. And average consumption of items in Nigeria are imported. You know what? That is a big problem for anybody to imagine that the solution will come overnight.
All right. Of course, we still have Yomi Asiwaju, is a public affairs analyst who joins virtually from Ogun State. Yomi, thank you for staying with us. Now, my question to you is this. You've had quite a number of things that has been said already. Feel free to react. But what do you make of the protest and the rationale, the reason behind it, vis-a-vis the economic policies of the current administration and the current realities of Nigerians?
All right. Thank you, Dapo. And I must also commend the other analysts in the studio. They have made very serious, valid points. I align with the fact that protest is a right of every citizen, and we should not be denied that right to hear our views or, of course, present it in that manner. However, I must say that what government envisaged or their fears, unfortunately, is beginning to happen. The Deputy National President of NLC in the studio, talked about some of the policies of government that should be long-term, and of course, there should be some that will alleviate our current situation. It saddens my heart when I heard that the NCC building in Kano State has been touched. That is a facility that is meant to address the issue of skill acquisition for young people in order to fulfill the 3 MTT, what's it called? Idea of the minister for, that's Bosun Tijani. So it's quite unfortunate that that kind of a place has now been touched, the Digital Industrial Park in Kano State. These are some of the policies, or these are some of the programs of the federal government to address our current situation. Of course, this may not yield results immediately, and that's why the issue of palliative is coming in. Like we said, it is not a problem that we are protesting, but it now becomes a problem when we begin to destroy some of our heritage or some of the things that should have, provided adequate solution to the problems that we are currently presenting to the government for solution. The solution is here already.
I'd like to stay with you on the destruction that, of course, we are seeing on our screen right now. We know that before today, the security forces actually did do some sort of display of show of force, in certain states. And the impression they gave Nigerians was they're up to the task. Security men will be on ground to ensure that lives and property, are safe. And now this is happening, vis-a-vis the fact that people have a right to protest. What do you make of it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the security analysis did not pay attention to that part of the country. I think they focus more on Abuja and Lagos State, and it's because of the antecedents that those places are prone to violence and all that. But unfortunately, seeing what is playing out in the north, that is Kano to be precise, I'm not sure the security analysis they did envisaged such. But it's quite unfortunate. And I must also say that people who are well informed, people who are well educated, wouldn't have gone ahead to do this. Because when you loot a computer system, loot all these are things that are meant to actually liberate you. And you have decided to loot them. Now it shows that you lack proper education. And that's why we must also say that previous governments, some of the seeds that they've sown, when they have failed to educate all these children, is what they are now reaping. It's quite unfortunate. If you had educated these children all the while before now, they would have grown up. They would have grown up to understand the implications of their actions. But unfortunately, we did not properly train them. And that's why presently, I think we should begin to think about the future in everything that we do. Our leaders, both those in the public and even the private sector, let's begin to see to it that we give adequate and right information to people through education, proper education, so that when they grow, they will understand the pros and cons of their actions, and it will not be a regrettable situation like what we are seeing today.
All right,
so it's very, very
I'm still
important.
Staying with you, I'm still staying with you. I mean, the current administration has insisted that its policies are steered in the right direction. They have long-term effects. It has said that, you know what, Nigerians at the end of the day will smile. Yesterday, I was watching the ministerial briefing where one of the ministers, Mr. Ihekaire, actually said their aim is to ensure that Nigeria becomes the Japa nation too. That's people running back to Nigeria to say, you know what, I'm Japaing to Nigeria. That is their goal. It's a long-term goal. It's a tall dream. Nigerians should bear with them. They should persuade with them, even though they have current biting problems. Is this valid? Looking at the realities on ground and their policies.
I've said it countless times on different platforms that Nigerians are known to be people who persevere a lot. Meanwhile, those who are in leadership position should show leadership as well by persevering, by showing to us that what they are asking us to carry, they are also carriers of that burden.
But members of the House of Reps slashed their salaries by 50%, trying to lead.
See, my brother, it's not by the salary. See, people now understand more because, you know, every day we keep saying so many things via social media or even the traditional media of the kind of lifestyle that some of our political office holders are living. And today, everybody believes that those that are rich in this country are politicians. That kind of insinuation or that kind of assumption, we should try and work on it. So if the president, if the governors, if the senators, reps, and all other political or elective office holders are telling Nigerians to show consideration and bear with us because the plans they have for us is that the future will be brighter, then they too should show empathy. We should begin to see them wear the same kind of shoes that they want us to wear in all ramifications. That has always been my own position. I'm not against the policies that will yield good fruit in the future because, of course, we are aware that a good leader will take his people from where they are to where they want to be. However, a great leader will take his people from where they are to where they ought to be. So where they ought to be is a product of vision and foresight. So every leader will always want to give their people, you know, something that can serve as a legacy even in the future. Meanwhile, it may take a while, but if you are telling us to endure, if you are telling us to persevere, we must see that from your side as well. You must show leadership by, you know, ensuring that the same shoe that you want us to wear is what you are equally wearing. So that is just my own position on that. We don't have a problem, you know, persevering. We don't have a problem enduring, but we also want to see them to that line. And I think it's not too much to ask our political office holders.
All right, so let me leave you for a moment, Yomi. I would like to ask you, Ejike, but let me take Amechi's opinion on this first. Amechi, our leaders also tightening their belts.
Come again. Are
our
you
leaders.
confirming that?
No, I'm asking you. With all of the things you see them do, I mean, some of them agreed to salary cuts, reduced, some of them, the number of their aides and all of that. But looking at everything they're doing, are they also living frugally?
No, you know, I am not one of those that actually pay attention to allowance or salaries of office holders. Because even when you bring 50% of their salary and you misapply it in the economy, it will still give zero answer. What is happening to Nigeria is less of individuals' entitlement in office. It's about right policies and implementation. whereby you have discipline towards implementation, I believe Nigeria will get their vision closer. This idea of theoretical development that people tell you, I was a member of Vision 2025 to 2050 of Nigeria, but I'm very sure that this present administration is not advocating that. That tells you that we don't have a plan as a nation. There is no vision that forms the agenda of Nigeria growth. And therefore, when people talk about House of Reps, Senate, or Cabinet of Mr. President, what they earn, they are distracted. The attention is what is our vision as a country. So we shouldn't be driven by political parties. Are you
insinuating that the current policies, the bold policies, unification of the exchange rate and also the removal of subsidies, at least those two bold ones, amongst the plethora of policies are headed nowhere? Is that what you're insinuating?
The action of first subsidy removal, for me, if not timing, was a good one. But it was not backed up by any policy. It was just an instructive development. I say, first subsidy is gone, and then you return back to nothing. Do you know that even after 1 year, fuel price is still going upward? And from indicators, it shows that they are still paying subsidy. It shows that subsidy is gone, but not gone. They are still doing intervention. How come the electricity that is long privatized, Nigeria is still spending billions of dollars, or rather, Naira, let me put it that way, to support the same sector to grow? How can you support what you are not in control of? You say you have deregulated electricity sector, but we are still having budget of this country seemingly going towards that sector. The same thing has happened to petrol. You have deregulated in petrol. We are still spending money on petrol. Check the expenditure of government. So that is the worry. That is why you see Nigerians, when they are on the street, they are asking for reversal of subsidy. No reasonable Nigerian would have done that. But they are telling you that since you can't fix it, give us our share. Our share is that if Nigeria is not better to feed us, because I believe making a strong economy that can feed the people, than making Nigerians richer than the economy. Because that is why you see people, some are complaining, some are well to do, even as they are protesting, some are still telling you, well, how can people use because of NSAS scenario to discourage protests? What kind of imagination is that? Protests should be driven by reasonable people, and police should be vigilant to arrest hoodlums in the midst of them. There is no way you begin now, okay, for example, now maybe something ugly has happened today, there's casualty in one place, and that become an end of Nigeria driving agenda of we don't like this. That is not true. Protest is not, a call for protest is not a call for violence. So call for protest is democratic and should be given that respect. The police, don't forget, some of this escalation was also necessitated by their reaction. The show of force was not necessary in the presence of civilians. Shouting with their voices changed nothing in government. But it will only show to you that the more the number grow in observing your policy, it tells you that all is not well. And the earlier Mr. President, even before they closed the minimum wage, was it not Mr. President intervention that brought to an end? So what is Mr. President doing now to speak to Nigerians that yes, your claim is right, your demand is in order, but I want you to give me time. In the area of fuel, give us even 12 months, give us 18 months. It's a timeline that enables somebody to bear.
So right now, the issue is not giving a timeline.
They are not giving timeline. So Nigerians feel that they are not safe forever. Nobody is telling them that the hardship is temporary. You only say it, you are not showing it. When people see that in the agricultural sector, do you know how much they're pumping into agriculture for the past 1 year? So what has happened? When insecurity has chased farmers away from farm and nobody's producing what we can eat, that now people celebrate yam. If you gift somebody a yam now, the appreciation will look like a bag of rice.
All right.
So unfortunate.
Let me leave you for a moment. Ejike, let me go back to you. You seem to be laughing. Anyway, have you eaten yam lately?
Who, me?
Yes.
You know, the last time I ate anything that yam related was 1990.
Oh, wow. But let's
people eat it, and that's fine with me, damn, but that's not my kind of food.
Yeah, well, interesting. It's more like gold now. But looking at the issues on ground, particularly some of the policies. I'm still going back to the issue of policy because that is where there's a lot of pressure, particularly from Nigerians. One of the cry is do something about the pump price. It's affecting transportation, it's affecting food item, it's affecting the way of, it's affecting accommodation. The ripple effect is humongous. Mm-hmm. And this is an administration that is saying, you know what? That subsidy regime was a hotbed for corruption.
Yes.
And the country was borrowing
to pay for it.
To pay for it. So it's like we're at crossroads. I'd like your take.
Subsidy. Again, I've given you my opinion about what subsidy should be. It should not be a cash thing, it should be a credit thing. Okay, so what Nigeria is doing is giving physical cash to the people that are importing, when it should be a credit. And then you could add credit if we were a country or Nigeria were a country to pay taxes, then they can write it off as tax expense on their businesses. But what is happening is, well, here is where it's going to cost us X amount of money to land a refined product, and here is what is costing us. The government said, write you a check. No, you're producing the crude. You're producing the crude. So if you have, the question should be, how many barrels of crude does Nigeria need to refine on a daily basis in order to satisfy the local demand? You're producing 2 million barrels or so a day. So does Nigeria require to refine 500,000 barrels? If they require that, the government steps in and said, okay, whoever is the local refiner, we are going to sell it to you at a discount, okay? And that discount should be passed back to the Nigerian consumer. But they're not doing that. You look at the federal government budget. You know, people talk about Nigeria being a wealthy nation. Nigeria is actually the poorest country of all oil-producing countries in the world. It's the poorest. Anytime you're a commodity-dependent nation and your population is running the triple digits, and it becomes the sole source of your revenue, you are in trouble. And then anytime your politicians are identified as the ones that are rich, your country is screwed. Okay? It shouldn't be. I live in Texas. Just to give you some context, our politicians are part-time legislators. They meet 6 months every 2 years to pass every law that needs to be passed.
6 months every 2 years?
Yes, and they do it odd years. So January this year, coming 25, they will meet from January to June. So if you're a policeman, senator, whatever it is, after that 6 months, go do whatever it is you're doing. You know how much they are paid? $600 a month. And Texas is what? Number 8 economy in the world.
Does it come with allowances?
No. We don't want poor people to be politics in America. What is happening in Nigeria, a lot of hungry people fighting their way into politics. They never had anything. You go roll the tape on a lot of Nigerian politicians, they didn't come from anything. That's why they do what they do to get into office. Because they're not public servants. They want to be served. You want people who go into politics. If I had become mayor of Dallas when I ran, you know how much they would be paying me? $60,000. I do it because I want to serve my city, not because of the money. The Nigerian politician goes into office for the money, for the prestige, for the power. And that's why they do whatever it is they do. They never even, you know, like after a while, hey, I got to resign, I'm going to retire. I have to spend time with my family. They are in it as long as, and even when they leave office, what do? They find a way to get back into it. So if you look at the federal government budget of Nigeria, it's less than $35 billion. Out of that, what is the single most contributor in it? Oil, selling crude. So even though your GDP runs in the $400 and something billion annually, if you look at a percentage of the budget to the GDP, it's less than 10%. So you are not capturing enough revenue from other activities. So you look at some of the states outside of Lagos or Bayelsa or Rivers. If the federal government were to withdraw the allocation, they will be bankrupt states. And then the governors, you know, Nigeria is a country of how many millions there are? Only 37 people that are important in this country. Only 37.
37.
37.
Would you like to explain more on that?
No, it's the president and then 36 governors. In fact, sometimes, you have the National Assembly push back on the president. But when you go to the state assemblies, the governors are running like monarchs. They do whatever they want. So the problem is not necessarily Mr. President, it's the governors. Because the governors award the contracts, the governor decide who gets what, and then they are not even running the economy. If you go to Google, look at the 5 Igbo states. Do you know since 1999, the 5 Igbo states have had a budget of more than $120 billion aggregate. The Igbo states are the smallest tribal states in the country. They can even fit in Niger State. If you divide how much money the Igbo states have gotten in 25 years per square mile, because in economic development, what you want to do is look at the area you have to cover. If you divide what the Igbo states have gotten in 25 years, the billions of dollars aggregate of the 5 states, and divide what the state of Texas has gotten in the same period, Igbo states have gotten more mile per square mile than the state of Texas. But do you have infrastructure development in Igbo states? The entire Igbo states is about 40,000 square miles. 120 miles one way from north to south, east to west about 85. What do you have going on in the entire state? You don't have a water system. You don't have power generated. You don't even have transportation. And the Igbo states have more proximity of state capitals than any other state capital. From Enugu to Oka is what? 35 miles. Oka to Owerri, 40 or something. The longer could be Abakaliki, Umuahia. By now, they should have done a loop road and do what to enhance economic development and do a regional thing. But now everybody is doing something. And none of the Igbo states has a budget of $1 billion. So it's like $500 million. That is just, you know, what the police department in Dallas is like $2 billion. More than, you know what I mean? So we have to be able to compare and contrast. But at the same time, like he said, find the policies to underwrite these things. You look at money. The central bank governor, the Minister of Finance, has issued an official rate to borrow money, and that is 26%. 26% official rate. So if you actually go to the bank and say, I want $1 million, let's say you want to start a small business, because the foundation of every economy are the small businesses. Okay? Be able to open a convenience store, do whatever, $1 million. You don't have to have the government to do palliative. This is just like begging. It's like your government has put you in a condition where you're begging them. That's palliative. It shouldn't be. It should be, what I mean. So what I'm just telling you is that when you borrow money, $1 million at 26%, a typical businessman has to make 3 times the interest rate being charged on the money to pay you back. That means if it's 30%, for instance, that means you have to make 300,000 naira to pay back the bank. And then for your own entrepreneurial ability and everything, you have to reward yourself. You have to be making 900,000 naira on a loan of 1 million naira to survive. Even if you're a drug dealer, you don't turn that money over. So the Nigerian government don't have the fundamentals as to how to energize and enable the economy. The thing is all dash me, you know, your senator come home and give you rice. It's an insult. How many times are you going to give me rice? You give me one bag of rice for 1 week, I have 52 weeks to go. You should enable me to be able to generate something that to survive, to sustain my family. Not from time to time with 5,000 naira, 10,000 naira, and the ministers jump on the national TV and say, it's an insult. Stop insulting Nigerians. Give Nigerians the right tools, like my friend here said, policy. Let me say this and I'm going to shut up. Nigeria has a benevolent democracy, not agency democracy. The benevolent is the wish and the feeling of the president. If the president wakes up and says, oh, do this, everybody does it. When you have agency democracy, it is institutionalized, it is governed by policy, it's governed by policies, programs. But what you have, governor wake up, give everybody rice, or go to my village and do a borehole. Everybody start clapping. Nobody's asking you, Mr. Governor, you're not doing us a favor. Mr. President, you're not giving us a favor. This is Nigerian money, but they turn it, make it look like it's their money. Nigerians should stop begging their own people. Even in the Bible, for those people who read the Bible, the word beg is not in the Bible. You say ask, demand.
I mean, I'm forced to, you know, go as far back as even our electoral, you know, process, the process of electing these leaders. But let's go on a quick break first. When we return, would, of course, treat matters arise and stay with us. Wu, of course, is virtual with us. Yomi, are you there?
Yes, I'm with you, Dako.
All right, I believe you had quite a number of the things Ejike said. It talked about, a style of governance, the structure, and that how it's important that Nigeria runs a structure-based democracy. You used the word agency as against having power concentrated on a few who maybe at their benevolence, his words, would decide to do and maybe undo. Your reaction?
Oh, yes. I followed his presentation keenly, and I must say that he has made some valid points. Talking about policies, I think it would be unfair to say that we don't have a workable or a working policy in this country. I think it would be unfair to conclude that those in government are not coming up with the right policies. But we must also acknowledge the fact that whenever a policy is introduced, it will definitely affect some people who are probably reaping from the existing system. Some will adapt to change, while some will not adapt to change. Definitely, those people are the ones that will frustrate any form of policy that is against their own personal or selfish interest. And that is where saboteurs come in. Saboteurs, they are ready to sabotage, they are ready to frustrate policies of government which does not benefit them directly or even their cronies. And that is one of the challenges that we have. And that's why we need upright leaders. Leaders who will be ready to, of course, with all sense of diplomacy, but yet still step on toes just because they want to deliver good governance to the people who voted them into office.
All right, Yomi.
Recently, let me quickly make it. Recently, we had when Dangote cried out. Now, hopes were raised as at last year when that facility was commissioned.
Yomi,
we all believe that things will...
Is it possible to just wrap it up in 30 seconds?
Yes. Hopes were raised then. We thought that with the introduction of the facility by Dangote, the Dangote refinery, things will work. But unfortunately, more than a year down the line, we've not been able to see significant results from that area. And Dangote had to cry out. It shows that there are some people somewhere who are frustrating the efforts of government in delivering good governance to Nigerians. So we should also look into that direction. But to say that there are no working policies or there are no workable policies in Nigeria, I think it would be unfair to our leaders. But of course, there are people who are sabotaging these policies. Let me round up for now.
All right. Let me go. My final question will go to Amaechi on this one. Many are saying that the president needs to come out, just like what Ejike said. The president should own it. It should come out. It should address Nigerians. If the president is to address Nigerians, what do you think should be in that speech? My question is to, of course, Amaechi on this one. What do you think should be in that speech that Nigerians would like to hear and you think would allow all of this protest, simmer or go away?
I think Mr. President has to address Nigeria. That, I think, is also democratic. And in expectation, Nigerians want to hear from Mr. President. Because don't forget, Nigeria is not individual's family. Nigeria is a country. We expect Mr. President, in defining the programs in his administration, bring timeline. There must be a time frame for every policy so that Nigerians' expectation will not be indefinite. When we talk about good policies, we are talking about the discipline behind the implementation of policy, not to have policies everywhere and still make laws and other sub-policies to thwart the same policy that is expected to hit Nigeria. This is a country that when they make law, they also leave provision that allows for flouting of that law. A country that each time they make policy, there is an allowance somewhere to eat up from that same policy without feeding the people. So I recommend that Mr. President, in addressing Nigeria, tell Nigerian on sectorial basis what we should expect and from what time frame to another, such that the confidence of Nigerians will not just be on the street. What you see people do in Kano on this day protest is expression of hunger, expression of ignorance. It's people who know nothing about what they destroy. You destroy your future. That is why we say separate these hoodlums from the protesters. Right. So Mr. President should not do more on condemning protests, but rather profiling solution that will bring confidence to discourage even the protests from completing 10 days. Because there's what they will hear from Mr. President now. People may want to believe that benefit of that is necessary. All
right, thank you so much. I understand that we need to, of course, go now. Many thanks to my guest, of course, talking about Ejike Okpa, a global affairs analyst. Thank you for your time. And also Ejike Okpa, former deputy president of the NLC, and Yomi Okeasiwaju is a public affairs analyst who joined is joining virtually from Ogun State. And also to the guest we had earlier. Many thanks to all of you. In case you missed out, you can actually catch up on our YouTube platform. That's News Central TV. You can follow me personally on socials at Dakpo Adigboyi. Well, this will continue tomorrow, and News Central from the break of dawn would be on top of it. Stay with us. Good night.